Hello, and welcome to another episode of Wellbeing at Work, a podcast by Workplace Options, a TELUS Health company. I'm Emily Morgan, a marketing specialist here at WPO, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Abbey Elias, as we sit down with Workplace Options President and CEO, Alan King, to discuss the range of issues shaping the Gen Z work experience and what leaders can do to create a more inclusive environment. With that, let us welcome Alan now. Hi, Alan. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I look forward to the conversation.
So to get us started, I want to talk about the issue that's top of mind for most Gen Z workers, AI. Last year, it was reported that over 2/5 of global leaders reduced or cut entry-level roles due to AI, while another 43% plan to do the same this year. As entry-level jobs disappear and more and more tasks are assumed by the technology, how can leaders ensure Gen Z's talent is still developed and that AI is used in a way that's empowering?
So I think it's a very interesting question, not just because it's about AI, but more importantly, it's how we use talent in different organizations. And the one thing that I think I would preface everything with is that while AI is certainly the newest technology on the horizon, it is not the first time that as societies we've been impacted by entirely new and what many had determined to be entirely transformative types of technology. The phone was that kind of technology. Basic access to the internet was that kind of technology. So I think the first is to recognize that AI is, in fact, a tool. And in our own organization, our services are delivered by human beings. That's what differentiates us in the marketplace. And so as we move forward as an organization, AI can assist what our human beings can do, but they can't replace what the human beings can do. So I think what I would say is what's most important for organizations is, number one, to understand what the technology is capable of doing and what the technology is not capable of doing. And then secondarily, it is to figure out then how it fits within the realm of its workplace. And actually, it's interesting because in this conversation, it's focused on Gen Zs. I've had other interviews where people have asked me the question for existing workers, for more mature workers. What does this mean? Because actually the most expensive worker in an organization is typically the worker that's been there the longest amount of time. So if an organization is going to save money, you save more money by reducing the most expensive workers than you do by the least expensive workers. So I think, as I said, for me, the number one goal here is to understand what the technology can do for each organization that's a part of it. But the other piece of that is help the organization have an open discussion about what it is not, how it is impacted, and really to look at where it goes from there.
Thank you so much for that insight. Continuing off of that, as we're thinking about how we can empower Gen Z within the context of a changing workplace, how can organizations ensure they're creating a culture of inclusion and belonging right from the beginning? In my own experience, I found that the job application and hiring process to be rather impersonal, and especially now with the rise of remote work and hybrid work, it's rare to receive proper onboarding. So how can leaders make sure Gen Z enters the workforce feeling confident and supported?
I think it really is how organizations onboard any new person into their organization. That whether you are a particular generational age or another, it impacts on your expectations, but it doesn't impact on what an organization needs to do in order to successfully introduce new people into its organization. And in some ways, it's a little bit easier if you're talking to someone who's brand new to the workforce, because there are no other prior expectations. There are no other prior experiences. So someone coming in is coming in fresh and new. And so in that regard, the onboarding experience, if it works well, isn't just about telling you, okay, this is the company you're joining, but it's also about asking you about that process of coming in and learning and understanding through new sets of eyes in order to better enable and to better build out that onboarding and that engagement to begin with. But overall, cultures of companies don't change or don't reassert themselves differently just because of the age or the generational background of groups. A culture of workplace options is the culture of workplace options. One of the things that we are working now as we're part of this broader telehealth community is how we blend the cultures of the different organizations together so that it isn't about one culture wins and one culture loses, but it's about the fact that culture is an evolutionary type of thing. That as every new person comes into an organization, just by nature of their uniqueness and who they are, that has the opportunity to impact on how that culture is expressed and understood. So it's an organic, if it's done well, it's organic. So in my mind, the key part of this is defining the culture of the organization and then having that definition be applicable to every generation of worker and look thoughtfully to ask people for their thoughts and ideas as they come in and grow with an organization. Those would be the measures I would suggest.
Thank you. And I think discussing that culture is really important to talk about the importance of effective leadership, because without talking about effective leadership, none of the strategies that you've discussed
Mhm.
are able to succeed. But at this time, research is showing that managers are clearly struggling, with many reporting high levels of stress, burnout, heavy workloads, and time constraints. So, in the face of these challenges, how can organizations ensure their managers are in a position to support incoming talent?
A couple of things. One of them goes back to what you just said about AI. This is exactly an area where AI can assist. And that is in the mundane things that get in the way of what managers and leaders need to do. If you are spending all of your time on administrative work, then you're not spending that time interacting and engaging with your team members. And that's not just about cultural change. It's not just about leadership for leadership's sake. That's about education. That's about understanding. That's about two-way communication and keeping people engaged in the organization. So number one, I think what companies can do is identify what are the things that they're really paying managers and leaders to do that are consequential to their job. And then how are they spending their time? Are they spending their time, the vast majority of their time on those tasks? Or has the company put in place such rigid bureaucracy or boundaries or rulemaking that their time is spent filling out forms or their time is spent going through tasks that are less valuable in the outcome? So that is certainly a piece of that. The second piece is that leadership needs to be first and foremost at the heart of an organization's culture. But in that, it also has to define that leadership isn't a title. Leadership is at every level of the organization. If you are an entry level person starting out in the organization, and you are learning your job for the first time and you figure out a better way to do something, then you become a leader in being able to share what you have learned or what you have brought to the job with others. So leadership so oftentimes gets confused with title, and that's a challenge because leadership is in every person potentially, and it shows initiative not just towards the company, but initiative in their own lives for their own careers. I think it's really important to recognize that we are stewards of our own lives and that our progression, while certainly it's impacted by the environment and by the organization that we're a part of, but our ability to grow, our ability to continue to learn and to evolve comes from our own initiative, that leadership within us. And I think that's the kind of thing that resonates in organizations. What I aspire to are leaders that are vulnerable, leaders that are learning and are open and transparent about the fact that we don't get everything right, but here's what we're trying to do. And if we get it wrong, it isn't because that was the end result we wanted. It was because we tried something and we failed. So making that culture of leadership at all levels front and center in the organization is the number one thing any business can do or any organization can do to make that culture of leadership real.
I think you eased some of our concerns, so thank you. So this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much, Alan, for joining us today and taking the time to answer our questions. And to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Be sure to visit our webpage for more information about our services and stay tuned for future episodes. Until next time, thanks for listening and take care.